Well then, hello everybody. Here I am, safely arrived in Scarborough. It is about 7 o'clock in the evening now. We left quite early this morning, about 7 a.m. And we arrived here not long after midday, so it was about 5 hours in total, partly because we stopped for a coffee and a piece of cake on the way, and then we hit a little bit of traffic on the M1 at the roadworks, so it just took us a little longer than we were expecting. But we got here, we parked up at our hotel, which is this building here behind me, which is the Ambassador Hotel, and it's on the cliff top, I think it's called. We're on the South Bay at Scarborough, and I will turn the camera around, and so you can get a lovely view of the castle and everything else that's here. So if you bear with me. And so there we have Scarborough South Bay. You can see the castle is on the top of the promontory overlooking the town, and this is the South Bay on this side of the castle, and obviously on the other side of the castle promontory is the North Bay. You'll notice that there are lots of flashing lights and entertainments and arcades and gambling machines and slot machines and that kind of thing down on the seafront. With the tide is actually going out quite a long way at the moment. When we arrived early this afternoon, it was washing up almost over the sea wall. And if I carry on walking around, this area of Scarborough is known as the cliff top because, as you'll see once I get to the edge, we are actually quite high up on the cliff, and it's a long way down. Now the building you can see in the middle distance is the spa, because Scarborough was a very popular spa town in the mid-19th century, right the way through really until the mid-20th century. With the introduction of the railways, it meant that more and more people, ordinary people, could go and take the benefits of bathing in the sea and drinking the spa waters that are quite plentiful in this part of North Yorkshire. Harrogate is another famous spa town just further along the road from here, but more inland. And you'll notice that quite a few of the buildings are actually Victorian villas and mansions, but very much designed as guest houses and hotels, all the way along this cliff top and right the way down into the town centre, in fact. The sea is it's a wonderful sound. I love the roaring of waves. When we arrived, and the reason I didn't film earlier is when we arrived today, it was really rather wet, not very windy, not particularly cold, but rather wet. So it was very much a case of enjoying walking in the rain, which I quite enjoy doing anyway. And we walked down into town and we had a lovely fish and chips dinner at the Princess Cafe in the centre of town, and it really was extremely good. And I was able to, I'll just turn the camera around again so that you can see me. So there's Scarborough behind me. I was able to indulge myself in a northern delicacy, if you like. One of the things that I really enjoy having when I come back up to the north of England is fish and chips with mushy peas, gravy, bread and butter, and a pot of tea. I know it sounds odd, and by gravy I don't mean the gravy that Americans are more used to, which is a kind of chicken white sauce. This is beef gravy, and it's delicious. And mushy peas are marrowfat peas that are then boiled and become a sweet kind of gloopy mess, really, but they are delicious. So it was really an opportunity to enjoy having a northern delicacy. Because if in the south of England, certainly, if you ask for chips and gravy, people look at you as if you've grown an extra head. It's just not the done thing down south to enjoy that kind of thing. But one of the great beauties of being here at the moment is that the only background noise that we have, in fact, is the sea. and it's such a change. It's the same kind of noise as you get from the A34 and the A40 if you live in Oxford, but it has a different quality because it's a natural sound, and I just so much enjoy being by the seaside. So I will stop filming now. I'm going to go for a little walk, and when I get back to my room I'll talk some more about some of what we did today. So I've walked a little bit further along the esplanade towards the town centre, and I thought I'd stop here because there is a little attraction, if you like, on this cliff face, and there are 2 or 3 of these along the side of the cliffs all the way around Scarborough, which is a little funicular railway. And you'll see, if you look down at the bottom, you'll see there are 2 carriages at the bottom. Well, normally the 2 carriages, one will be at the top of the hill, one at the bottom, and you walk in, one goes down the hill, the other one comes up the hill, and then you walk out at the bottom or the top, depending which way you're travelling. It's a much quicker and less exhausting way of travelling up and down the cliff face here in Scarborough. And there are a few towns, Victorian towns, seaside towns like Llandudno with the Great Orme, that still have these funicular railways, and they're a real blast from the past in many respects. Inside, we did go on one earlier today, but I wasn't filming at that time. But one of the things that is very nice about them is that they still have the wooden panels. They're very much original, as were built in the last century. So at some point, hopefully I'll get another go on one of those and I'll be able to take you for a ride. So I've come down now to the bottom of the esplanade at the top of the cliff on the north side, and as you can see, Scarborough Castle and Scarborough South Bay are down behind me. You may be able to see the roof just below me here of a house. This is actually the only residential property on this part of the seafront at Scarborough. It's a 5 double bedroom, 5 bathroom detached house, which is currently on the market. So if anybody's interested, you know, to make inquiries as quickly as possible before it sells. It's currently being used, I think, as holiday lets, which is hardly any surprise, given its prime location right in the heart of the resort. But it's in a beautiful location and quite isolated, so it'll be lovely and quiet at night time once everyone's gone to bed. And in the winter it'll be particularly magnificent. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with the geography of the UK, I am currently standing in the northeast of England, so I guess probably halfway to 2/3 of the way up the east coast of Great Britain. And the sea behind me separates Great Britain from the continent, particularly from the Netherlands and then further north to Norway. It also actually happens to preserve the best remains of Mesolithic European culture, because at the end of the Mesolithic period, which would be 5,000–6,000 years ago, there was a great catastrophe, possibly a landslip, certainly a tsunami out at sea, which caused a huge tidal wave to sweep in and flood the land that used to run from here to the Netherlands and Norway, and completely submerged it underwater and wiped out several civilizations, towns and villages and the like. And so the land was called Doggerland, and one of the main meteorological weather areas out to sea just behind me is Dogger Bank. At some point, when technology allows it, it may be possible for archaeologists to properly excavate the remains that we know lie out there undisturbed, preserving for future generations certainly a great deal of evidence of how our forebears used to live in this landscape before it was completely washed away by the sea. I'm now going to go back up to the hotel. It's beginning to get dark. and you can see that the lights are looking ever so cheerful down below, but we've been up a long time today. We're hoping to go to Whitby tomorrow, so I will do a bit of filming there, and hopefully we'll include something of Bob and Wendy as well. When I get back to my room, I'll be doing a little bit of filming about the stash enhancements that I obtained today, and so I will speak to you all very shortly. So bye for now. Hello everyone. So I'm back in my hotel room now. As you can see, it's very nicely appointed. Unfortunately, I'm on the third floor for Americans. Bob and Wendy are on the first floor, second floor for Americans. Their room is directly below mine. It's a very nice little ensuite room. There's a bedroom up a couple of steps there, a bathroom and shower and so on to the side, and this nice little sitting area here. Unfortunately, we don't have a view of the sea from this room or from the room below, which is just one of those things. But we've got two big windows, and they're very light and airy rooms, so that we're quite happy with our arrangements. So a couple of things I didn't mention, I don't think, when I was talking about Scarborough. So I mentioned the great inflooding of Dogger Land during the late Mesolithic, early Neolithic period. The sad truth is that this part of North Yorkshire and the East Riding of Yorkshire down to Hull is disappearing into the sea at an alarming rate. Since the medieval period, we know of 28 towns, coastal towns, that have simply disappeared into the sea. Most of the big towns like Scarborough and Whitby and so on have got very strong sea defences to prevent the loss of the towns, but there are little hamlets and villages and collections of houses all along the coast that are at grave risk of disappearing, and there isn't a lot that can be done. This is a natural process, and the sea will go where it will, and anyone who has witnessed the waves in action will know the sheer brute force power that is available to the sea. So it is unfortunate that that's one of the problems that this part of the world faces. The other thing I meant to mention was Scarborough Castle. You saw the ruins on the promontory. That promontory was known to have an Iron Age settlement, probably a hill fort, rather similar to the ones that I've talked about at length in Oxfordshire. And it was also known to be a Roman signalling point, because the Romans pushed to not that much further north in Britain as the kind of edge of their empire, at Hadrian's Wall, which everyone will be familiar with, which is in Northumberland, which is basically the next county or so up the coast. Excuse me. It's not quite, but it's very nearly. I do apologise. And during the medieval period, well, during what's known as the Anarchy, when King Stephen and the Empress Matilda were battling each other for the right to rule England, which eventually Stephen won, but it was Matilda's son who became Henry II. So in a sense, although Matilda was never Queen of England, she ensured that her son became king after Stephen's death. And Scarborough Castle was built by one of Stephen's camp followers who had helped him at one of the battles that he won as part of his ongoing civil war with Matilda. And for those of you who may be familiar with, oh, I can't remember the name of it now. Cadfael, that's right. The Cadfael books of the kind of the Benedictine monk in Shrewsbury, which is on the western side of England, on the Welsh Marches border between the northwest of England and Wales. That was also set during the Anarchy as well, so you may be familiar with the period from those books and the TV series that starred Sir Derek Jacobi and the titular role. So Stephen's favourite built the castle, but then when Henry II became king, these castles, which had technically been built without approval, proper approval, were called adulterine castles, and he forced them all to be handed back to the Crown. Scarborough Castle remained a fortified place really right up until the late medieval, early Tudor period, at which point, from the time after Henry VIII onwards, it really falls out of use as a defensive fortification. There are further defences up and down the coast which are more significant than Scarborough Castle. So those are the two things I wanted to talk about that I've mentioned in passing. One of the reasons we all came up to Scarborough, Bob, Wendy and I, is we wanted to go to a very nice fabric shop in the town called the Sewing Centre. And it's a beautiful shop. It's almost invisible from the road. You happen upon it on a street of big terraced houses that are obviously hotels and guest houses. And it's a very, very small, unprepossessing building. But it's actually the kind of ground floor of the shops on the ground floor of two shops next door to each other that are joined at the back of the building. And it is packed to the rafters with beautiful fabrics, and very helpfully fabrics that are sorted into the primary colour groups. So you have reds and greens and yellows and oranges and blues and browns and black and whites and that kind of thing. And then there are also plain fabrics, and almost everything was £5.50 a metre, which is incredibly good value for a metre of 100% cotton. So I had talked, as you know, about making a bag for the summer make-along as a prize, and I knew I wanted a very summery fabric, and so I saw this and immediately thought of summer. So I'm hoping it's not being too blown out. I don't think it's slightly more yellow than perhaps is showing up on the camera, but this is going to be the main body of the bag. And this is going to be the base. So it's a lovely yellow polka dot, which complements the lovely, very subtle shadings of yellow in this fabric. And I wanted a separate fabric for the interior. And so I saw this beautiful green. So I think the three colours together, the yellow upper, the brighter yellow polka dot base and the green interior, they just absolutely scream summer to me. So those are going to be the fabrics that I use to make the bag as a prize. And I hope that whoever wins it enjoys it and enjoys getting use of it. I will obviously, if I need any assistance, I know I can call on Wendy. She's an extremely good seamstress. So I'm very, very conscious that I have such a huge talent there waiting to help me as much as she can. The other fabric I bought, you may remember I was going to make a rabbit, and I'd seen two fabrics in Masons, one of which was the right pattern, which was the kind of calico coloured pattern background with a very small flower. With a lot of space between each of the flowers, and it just looked fabulous. The other, but it was a linen kind of fabric and was just hard and quite crunchy. The other fabric, which was the right feel, was far too busy a pattern, so I couldn't. And I bought one which, in retrospect, would make a very good contrast fabric, but I don't think should be the main body of the fabric. And I saw this in the Sewing Centre, and I think this has just enough interest that it will make quite a striking body, but isn't so busy that it's actually going to detract from things like the eyes and the nose when I embroider them in. So that's another. I have to say, these are really nice fabrics, and they have a lovely feel to them and a lovely sheen as well. So I'm very pleased. So if ever you're in North Yorkshire, in Scarborough, the Sewing Centre, apparently there are coach parties actually coming from the surrounding villages and towns to come here for the fabric. So it's obviously a very well known and well kept secret up here in the northeast of England. Whilst we were at the Fabric Centre, Bob, the enabler in chief, decided to ask if there was a wool shop in Scarborough, to which the answer was yes. And so we were given directions and off we trotted. The shop is named Ali Baba, as in Barbar Black Sheep. For those of you not aware, Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves is one of the 1001 Arabian Nights tales, which my father would say were told by Cherriade, Scheherazade. It was his way of remembering Scheherazade was Cherriade. Just as Rimsky-Korsakov was Rip Your Corsets Off. So it's funny because I remember these things, so they obviously worked as mnemonics. So we went in. So yes, Ali Baba discovers the den of the 40 thieves, which contains all their treasure, and learns the secret password, which is Open Sesame. So that's where that comes from. And I think the owner's intention was to... Oh, well, and just to finish on the Ali Baba story, I think I'm right that his slave girl is the one who foiled the attempts of the 40 thieves to kill him, and so he rewarded her by giving her her freedom and marrying her to his son, which was the supreme honor for the culture, as it were. So that was the climax of the story. So I'm sure many of you will be familiar with it. But I think the idea of the shop being called Ali Baba was, first of all, the pun on Barbar Black Sheep, the sound that sheep make when they bleat, but also that going in was a bit of a treasure trove. Now, unfortunately, there was a class, well, it didn't seem to be a class, it seemed to be an informal drop-in session of knitters, including one man, I'm very pleased to say. So we weren't able to see everything that was in the shop. I mean, the people in there couldn't have been nicer, but we didn't really want to intrude. And I happened to see a basket on the floor. Now, I didn't realise this was a bargain basket. And I mentioned in my podcast on Monday, yesterday, gosh, is it only yesterday? It feels like a lifetime ago. I mentioned in the podcast that I wanted to crochet the elephant head. Which I'm really looking forward to doing. Well, in this bargain basket, which I didn't know was a bargain basket at the time, there was this yarn which is called, what's it called? It's called Fiesta, Hayfield Fiesta, which is a 50% bamboo, 50% acrylic. Well, it is incredibly soft. I have to say, it's one of the softest yarns I've ever felt. I'm really impressed by it, but I saw these colours and I thought, yes, those are the ones. So I will just hold them all up for you to see. These are they. They are fabulous. The bamboo, the viscous bamboo, gives it such a glossy sheen. It really does, and you're getting a very real interpretation of the colours on the screen there. So I'm really pleased with these colours, and I've decided that the elephant isn't intended to look real. It's a decorated elephant head, and so I don't need to worry, because the trunk, for example, is supposed to be grey, and I've actually got this rather pretty kind of sage come aqua colour, which I think will look absolutely fabulous, especially when paired up with the teal and the emerald green. And then there's this beautiful fuchsia pink and the bright orange, which is such a happy summery colour. Anyway, and I just thought cream to balance everything out. So they were only £2 a skein. If I'd known that, I'd probably have bought all the others as well. But anyway, they're not available in Masons, so I assiduously would not have bought something that I could have bought in Masons, because I want to support my local yarn store, but these are not available in Masons, and they were incredibly good value. And I bought one other thing, which I will talk about, which is I couldn't come to North Yorkshire without buying something from West Yorkshire Spinners. And this is their Fusions, which is a 75% wool, 25% nylon blend. I think it's a DK, I'm not sure. I haven't got my glasses on. I'm sorry, Bob, I've actually not got my glasses with me. I can't see. Sorry, my eyes are not working. Anyway, this is it. So it's a lovely russet and burgundy and teal and brown and rust. It's a lovely explosion of autumnal colours. I saw this, that they had, someone in the shop had knit up a hat which really showed off the colour banding to a great effect. So this isn't a striped yarn so much as a banded yarn, more like a cake. This again is not something that is sold in, I just can't see what that green, white on green says. I'm sorry, I don't have my glasses on, and I'm not going to get up to get them because I'm not going to be talking for that much longer. But I just saw this, and I think I might make myself a hat for next winter in this. As I say, it's not available in Masons, so again, it's something that I wouldn't have been able to buy other than here, and that cost £5. So I'm very happy with that. So that's all my stash enhancements for today. Tomorrow we're off to Whitby, so I will hopefully do some filming, as I say, tomorrow, and I will speak to you all again. So for now, good night and God bless, and I will speak to you again soon.